This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Joining me now is Governor Asa Hutchinson. Governor, always good to be with you. Thank you for your time, for your availability, and for sure your candor in answering all my questions.
Well, thanks, Roby. It's always good to be with you. Look forward to it.
Let's begin with the news of the day. On Thursday, there are 98 Afghan refugees that are going to be relocated to Arkansas. Tell me a little bit more about where these refugees may be located and what will the state's role in this be?
Well, the information that I have from the White House is that there's 98 refugee allocation to our state. That doesn't mean they come here immediately. It could be over a course of weeks, but that's the allocation that we've received. And of that, 49 would be in Northwest Arkansas and 49 assigned in Central Arkansas. There's really no specific role of the state, but the White House, as the refugee coordinator there, has made an effort really to communicate, let us know what's going on. The relationship is from the federal government to the community, the refugee settlement organizations. For example, Canopy in Northwest Arkansas, and there will be, which is a church group that has really been licensed to handle refugee resettlement, and then a similar type organization or faith-based group in Central Arkansas. And so we don't know exactly when they'll arrive, but they went through the vetting process with me, and obviously we want anyone who comes here to be vetted to make sure that they have met the criteria as a Afghan refugee who served our state or country over the last 20 years, our military services there, that they have had their health screening done. And so that's the assurance that I have. And they went through that in great detail, but over the course of the next couple of weeks, I expect those Afghan refugees to start arriving.
All right, let's turn our attention to COVID-19. We've actually seen some pretty positive trending numbers over the last week or so. We've seen declining hospitalizations on a statewide basis. We've seen fewer new cases on a daily basis. The numbers still are not good. We're not where we want to be, but what do you attribute to the declining numbers based on what we were seeing when we were really more in a surge?
Well, it is significant that we've had, I believe it's 8 or 9 days now of consistent reductions in our hospital capacity, capacity's increased, but we've had a reduction in our hospital use by COVID patients. You know, our cases have been going down. And this is even after we've had Labor Day, after we've had school start. And so this is really encouraging. And I think the reason is that we've, prior to school starting, really accelerated our vaccination rates in our state. We've had over a 40% increase in vaccinations. The schools, the employers have been engaged in it. That's made a difference. And then even the other safety precautions that those who have not been vaccinated, they continue to protect themselves and others by wearing a mask or socially distancing. So those are important factors. And obviously we got hit early on it. It hit us hard. And it's great news to see that on the decline. I hope that we can keep that up.
Clearly, there were a lot of vaccinated students storming the field in Fayetteville last weekend. So you've clarified your position on President Biden's vaccine rules, which we are still waiting for details of, particularly on OSHA. And philosophically, you think it's going to make people more hesitant to get the vaccine. In reality, it may force more people to get the vaccine. What's wrong with forcing people to get this vaccine that may save lives? We've done that with mumps and measles and polio and a host of other diseases in our lifetime.
Well, and that's right, though, but it's never been done by the federal government mandating it to businesses to require those vaccinations. And so that's why I wanted to make sure that I clarified it, that I'm not opposed to a vaccine mandate under the right circumstances and whenever it is directed by public health at the state level. For example, in the educational environment, we do have requirements for vaccine. These are not federal mandates, these are state requirements. I also support employers if they want to have a vaccine requirement in their workplace. That's the freedom that they have, and I don't think the state should prohibit them from doing that. So I wanted to make sure that was clear. But what the federal government has done under President Biden is really unprecedented. The only case that's cited is that we see the vaccination order of President Washington when they had the smallpox outbreak and he ordered the troops to be vaccinated. That's obviously the role of the commander in chief. And so President Biden certainly has the authority of commander in chief to direct the military personnel to be vaccinated. For federal employees, that's the responsibility of the chief executive, and that's would be within his authority. But to go further in that unprecedented way to say any business that has over 100 employees have to either have everybody vaccinated or they have to be tested on a regular basis. We haven't seen the OSHA rules, but that is the problematic area for many Southern governors. And it's not just the governors, but Dr. Scott Gottlieb has made the point, who served in the Obama administration, that kind of mandate could be counterproductive because businesses are going to say, well, we're just going to wait on the OSHA rules. And so I think, and of course, the other argument is that it hardens the resistance. So I think it's wrong on policy and strategy. It may or may not be constitutional. I have questions about it, but I think it was a bad policy decision that was counterproductive to work I've been doing here in the state, going to 19 or 16 different cities, pushing for vaccinations, encouraging it through education, through trusted advisors, and not from mandates from the government. That's a strategy that we implemented, and I don't like reversing course on that.
If it works, though, will you be okay with that? If we see fewer deaths and we see fewer cases and hospitalizations, will you have a different opinion?
Well, we would always rejoice that we don't lose any life, and we want to save lives, and certainly we would be happy with that outcome. I believe we're going to get there in terms of vaccinations, in terms of reducing hospitalizations on the course that we're in. It's unknown as to whether this mandate's going to make a difference or not. By the time OSHA acts on that, we will have to wait and see. But it is important, though, to act in a constitutional manner as you fight even a pandemic. And so I think it's a policy disagreement. We're all trying to do the same thing in a different way, and that's to increase vaccinations. We're doing that in Arkansas, and that burden on local businesses, I think would be really challenging for them, the cost of it, the burden of it, and the unprecedented nature of it.
All right, one more question before we shift to the legislature. There was a breakthrough this past week with the first rice sale from Arkansas to China. This is a big score for Arkansas rice farmers, obviously. Tell me, how did that deal come together from what you know, and what do you think the potential is going forward?
Well, it's really exciting to see Ralston Family Farms out of Atkins. That is a family operation, 10 generations in farming, to get this contract and to have the first sale of this long grain rice to China. And it's the first in the United States of a long grain variety. And we hope that this is a sign of future purchases of Arkansas rice. How did it come about? That's a long global story. Whenever I first visited there in China in 2015, I call on the Minister of Agriculture and make the case that whenever China wants to buy rice, I hope you keep Arkansas in mind. And then you go forward that we finally in 2017 got an agreement that they will allow our rice, but they wanted to inspect our facilities. And so 7 facilities in Arkansas that produce rice were inspected, have been approved. Ralston Farms was one of those, and they're the ones that got the first purchase. And in the interim, you had, the first phase of the trade agreement where they agreed to buy, I believe it was $200 billion of U.S. farm commodities. This is a part of that. So the strained relationship with China is there. It impacts all of these relationships, but food is one area that we ought to be able to sell, and we ought to be able to help our farmers in that way. And certainly it's a need that they have in China.
All right, we have at the end of this month, supposedly a legislature coming back into regular session to deal with congressional redistricting. They also want to take up some other legislation. We've seen some other bills filed. There's been talk of bills filed, everything from Arkansas's version of this Texas abortion law, perhaps some pushback on this Biden vaccine rule, other things being discussed too. I know you respect the legislature and the separation of powers, but I kind of want to get your take as an attorney and as governor. Do you think they can take up these other issues in regular session? Because if the answer is no, they're going to come to you to put it on a special session call.
And the answer is no. I don't think they can bring anything but redistricting up in the extended regular session. Our Constitution provides for a limited session, and there's an exception that they can come back for redistricting purposes. So I think it's limited in the special session. And yes, limited in the regular session that's extended. When you get to the special session that we may have for the primary purpose of adding additional income tax cuts, then if they have, I believe it's a 2/3 vote, a supermajority, they can add additional items to it. I think you have to take it on a case-by-case basis as to whether anything else should be added to that special session. There's always some cleanup items, but in most of those instances, it's preferable to wait until the regular session when it comes up again. But we'll see how that develops and what there's a consensus for as to what should be added. In terms of the Texas abortion case, that most likely is going to have to be, obviously it's in the courts. I think everybody wants to wait and see what the final decision is there. We're well positioned in Arkansas with our own court challenge that's working its way up to the court. So I think the thing to do would be to wait until those court issues are resolved before we take additional action.
You said possible special session. Are you committed to having a special session on tax reform?
Well, I'm committed to tax reform, reducing the tax rate, and I think we're very close to it. I've always said that we need to reduce our individual income tax rate down, hopefully to 5% eventually, but I believe we can get there to 5.5% while I'm governor, and that's exciting to me. We've worked hard to build our economy, and so I asked my Department of Finance to come up with a 5.5 plan to reduce it 5.5%. I asked them to work with the General Assembly on this. We've incorporated ideas and there's a consensus we can get there. Now there's some that want to do more. We're working through whether we can actually reduce it further to 4.9, but that remains to be seen. And then we have to determine how we allocate those tax reductions among the different income groups. And that's something we're currently working on. I don't want to call the session until we have a consensus on it. We work through all of this process. We haven't completed that yet. So they're going to have the redistricting regular session at the end of September, I believe. And then we'll probably be looking at October if we can build the consensus in terms of the special session for the tax reductions.
So you're saying that special session may not happen on the tail end of the regular session if that consensus is not there. Am I hearing you clearly on that?
That's correct. I'm not bound by any time frame. I want to make sure I'm clear on it, what we can do, and that we have some consensus before we bring everybody in.
What's the price tag that you're looking at, that you're kind of playing with in terms of your top end number for this tax reduction, whether it's individual income tax rates at the top level or maybe some middle income tax reform or perhaps some of the reshaping of the income tax brackets? I know there's a lot of things that are being discussed, as you've alluded to.
Well, there's different ideas out there as to how we can get to 5.5%. But whenever that's fully phased in, that's over $150 million a year in terms of a tax reduction. And so over 10 years, that's over $1.5 billion. And so it's a significant tax reduction. We've been very careful as to how we've done this before, as to making sure that as we lower the taxes, we can continue to increase teacher pay, we can meet our obligations in education, as well as the other essential services of the state. We've been successful, and I want to make sure we stay on that path. In terms of how that's broken down, obviously, if you lower the rate to 5.5%, the higher income do get a break there, but it's also focused on the middle income as well as the lower income. And that's, we've given a lot of breaks to lower income. And so there's discussion as to whether we need to concentrate on the middle income or evenly divide that out. That's one of the points that we have to continue to work on.
Two proposals that have been floated have been corporate tax reform to maybe keep up with this individual income tax reduction. I think Randy Zook from the state chamber has talked to you about that, and he said it on our show last week. Also, there is a proposal that's been floated by Attorney General Leslie Rutledge as a potential amendment campaign to eliminate the individual income tax in 8 years. I'd like to get your position on both of those proposals.
Well, in terms of eliminating the state income tax, that's not going to happen while I'm governor. And I'll leave that to the candidates that are running in the next election to debate that issue and determine the path after I finish my time as governor.
Would you support a plan to eliminate the individual income tax in 8 years?
Like I said, Roby, I'm not going to say yay or nay on that. My goal has been to get the income tax rate for individuals down to around the 5% level. And because I knew we could always do that without raising other taxes. And that's the challenge. I don't want to raise the sales tax. I don't want to raise the property tax. So that's the debate as to how you get down from there. I think you can lower it gradually, but I don't know how far you can go, and I don't want to raise other taxes. I'm going to leave that to the future candidates. In terms of the corporate income tax, my priority has been the individual income tax to lower, but there's a lot of support for letting our pattern of lowering taxes follow with the reduction of the corporate income tax about a year later. So we'll have some more discussions on that, but right now that's not on the agenda. We'll see. I want to look more at the budget numbers to see if there's what the possibilities are to do more.
Open to it, but not committed to it. That's what
right.
I'm reading there. All right. He's Governor Asa Hutchinson. As always, we appreciate you. Thank you very much, Governor.
Good to be with you, Roby. Thanks so much.